This is Jennifer Keel at the Balboa Island Museum. We're here on March 3rd with Bob Gilmartin, and we are conducting our oral history. My first question to you would you please tell me why Balboa Island holds such a special place in your heart?
Well, my first introduction to Balboa Island was when I was about 5 years old. And my family lived in the San Gabriel Valley, and we had neighbors that also lived down the street from us, and they had a home at the corner of Sapphire and Balboa Avenue. And we would come down summers. My dad was busy a lot of the time. My mother would bring my big brother down to spend a few days, and we'd come down probably 3, 4, 5 times during the summer. And it was like, you know, this magical playground for somebody 5 years old at that time. You didn't have a care in the world, and being at the beach and riding around the paddle boards in the bay was fabulous. So, as I said, that was my first introduction. When I met my wife and we dated, we would come here often to go to dinner and just, you know, walk the island. When we got married, we started spending summers down here with friends. And then when we had our children, we spent, I'll bet probably every summer for 12, 14 years here with my wife's sister and their family. And we, you know, would try to rent the same house right next to the two houses over from the bridge, matter of fact. We're like right behind it, I think, here. Anyway, so much of my summer life was part of the island. And I remember one of the summers we were down with my children. We went looking at houses just to have something to do one afternoon. And we thought, boy, you know, it'd be wonderful to be able to buy a house here someday. Well, thank the Lord, I was able to make some astute investments that paid off fairly well. So in 1986, we decided to come down on Super Bowl Sunday and found our house and made an offer on it the next week. And we were islanders.
That's fantastic. Would you share some of the earliest memories you had when you were 5 years old? What really made this place so special for you?
Well, you know, it was so different than what I was used to living in the valley. You know, it was just, I always thought it was kind of like a carnival atmosphere. I mean that in the best sense of the word. I mean, you know, I remember walking down to the Jolly Roger, and there used to be a little ice cream stand on the corner there, and, you know, getting ice cream with my mom and my brother. And as I said, we would be all day out in the bay on the paddle boards, you know, going around looking at the boats and fishing off the paddle boards and playing in the sand, and it was just you know, a wonderful time of your life when you didn't have anything else to worry about but having fun.
What would be your earliest memory? So I know you came here very young. What would could you describe the, you know, ideal day, or this, you know, particular memory that you would say this is the very first encounter, maybe the details of that?
One of the first things I do remember is, it had to be one of the first few times we came down, and it was a weekend because my dad came with us. And the people that owned the house where we stayed also had a boat. And of course I remember it as this huge yacht. I'm sure, you know, it wasn't anything at all like that, but it was a boat, and it was on a dock at the end of the street, Sapphire. And we went down, and Mr. Blair was his name, those were our neighbors, and he took us for a ride. And we had lunch on the boat, and that was just, I mean, just so special. And that's my earliest memory.
It's wonderful. What else would you share that brings out that inner child in you through your memory? So you're sharing these boat adventures. Is there any particular experience you had doing any activities that really shaped your...
You know, no, nothing that stands out. I mean, again, as I said, it was just you know, my brother and I were always very close, and we, you know, got along well together, and we were the greatest playmates, and, you know, just spending time with him at the beach was just a great way to go through the summer.
That's fantastic. How have you seen it change throughout the years?
how have I seen the change throughout the years? Well, it doesn't seem as, believe it or not, it doesn't seem as crowded as it used to be. I mean, I can remember sitting on the bayfront or walking down the sidewalks here during the summertime. And I mean, it was like being in the mall at Christmas. You could hardly walk down the streets at night. It was so busy with families getting ice cream or Balboa bars and bananas, and even on the boardwalk it was like that. And it's just, you know, it's not like that today. I guess it's because there probably are fewer rentals than there were then. I'm more owner-occupied dwellings. But that's probably the biggest difference, are the crowds.
That's great. How about with holidays? What particular ones would stand out to you? Since this island celebrates so many of them in such a unique way with boat parades, and just was there a particular year or a particular celebration that really struck you as unique?
I never spent any holidays here that I can recall when I was little, but my wife is one of the greatest decorators in the world. Do not have enough garage space because of the storage for all the holiday decorations we have for every conceivable holiday. In fact, one of the things we did for her, we put a bay window in the front room when we moved in down here, so she'd have a stage to do all her decorating. So we as a family are very into the holidays. We love the holidays as well as our girls. And it's a great place to, what? 4th of July. All of them, we're fun. We have as many people as the house will hold, and you know, what better place to have them than here, so.
That's excellent. How have those celebrations changed throughout the years? Do you see a larger presence here or a different way that people celebrate perhaps the 4th of July?
We and our friends have all gotten a lot older. That's how they've changed. And maybe we're not up as late as we used to be or raise as much cane. No, you know, I mean, they're pretty much the same, I think. Yeah, and now we're celebrating them with our, you know, a lot of our friends and their grandkids, which is kind of nice. So we're ushering them into the, you know, into that that part of their lives too, which is great. So we have a big family and lots of friends, and we have an open door policy. You just got to get on the calendar and you're welcome. So that's the way we enjoy spending our time.
Would you share how you decided to make Balboa Island your home?
Well, you know, as I said, it was always a magical place for me. And as a child, and then dating, and then married life, and then as a parent, you know, it always seemed to just fit the bill. When our kids were little, it was a great place to come. They could hardly wait to get down here to go on vacation with their cousins, my wife's sister's family. And yeah, it seems like we all got along so well. No, we never had any fights. Nobody ever got in trouble or anything else. And so it's been very much a part of our life, and a fun part of our life. Very, very special.
With you moving here in '86, what were some of the things that you did to your home to make it special for you? Or did you use the decor as an outlet? I know your wife is really into the holidays.
The only way we could afford to buy a house was to buy a fixer-upper, and I gotta tell you, we got a fixer-upper. I mean, from the ground up. We had no idea how much fixing we were gonna be doing. So we're still doing it, I guess, aren't we? Yeah. So no, we had to do a lot, but you know, we knew that was the price we paid to get here, and we were willing to do it. And we knew we were in it for the long term, and so we did what we could as time went on, and we're very happy with our little house.
That's wonderful. I know you can add your own signature to a home like that, so it's worthwhile to create all those elements and new memories through that as well. Would you share, perhaps even where you decided to purchase, do you recall that it's that street on its earliest days and kind of the transformation of what it looks like now?
You know, not as a child. I mean, you know, I have not much of a memory of individual streets or houses. Certainly the house where we stayed, you know, I have a good recollection of that, but you know, not really the surroundings. as a child, I don't think, focus on those kinds of things. It was more, my mind was just set to get down to the street, to the beach. That was the goal.
However, when we found this house on Diamond, the house where he stayed was kitty corner.
Yeah, it's right across the alley, which is really kind of
That was
eerie. Yeah.
That was
Wow.
Yeah. So
amazing.
it's
That's
not there
hard
today.
to
It's been
say.
torn down and rebuilt, but you're right, dear. It was across the alley. So
That's excellent. Do you have images of when you moved in, of the most current, last standing of the home? It's neat to see the change over time. We're cataloging the homes right now, and so it's such an interesting aspect.
the house where we stayed when we were kids, there was a little studio apartment up over the garage. And that's where, as I said, most of the time was just my mom and my brother and I stayed. But one thing I remember about that, which is kind of crazy, he had a shelf built all the way around this main room, and he had all these little bottles of liquor that people, collect. I was fascinated with those things. I said, those must be for kids. They're little, Anyway. So, strange thing to remember.
Let's see here. Would you share any favorite story you would have about a celebrity you might have encountered at the island?
Gosh, I can't
remember
think.
the guy's name, that goofy guy, that comedian, used to be on CL.
I can't recall.
We've seen a lot though. There's been quite a few down here. What's his name? Athletes. We've had athletes, several athletes.
A surfer.
And,
No, I don't know if a surfer.
what was his name?
Well, no, Rayford Johnson lives
Rayford
down here
Johnson.
on Marine. No,
Yeah.
I guess, and no, a few of the local news people we've seen down here on weekends on the ferry or something like that. If that, they would qualify as a celebrity, but nobody of like movie star status. Yes,
It certainly shaped the culture here, and it's fascinating people's encounters.
That first year we were here, remember Diane Thomas down the block? Oh, yeah. Had a party and.
Excuse me, you guys, sorry about that.
I'm not keeping up with this live at all.
And she was married to the guitar player with all the tattoos.
Oh, Tommy Lee.
Tommy Lee.
Oh,
Heather
And Heather Locklear.
Locklear, yeah, Heather Locklear,
Heather
yes.
Locklear and Tommy
That's
Lee
right.
and Tommy.
Yeah, they had some connection to the family that lived down the
They were there
street.
for 4th of July.
Yeah.
That's right. That's our celebrity status. And of course, Bob and the lyrics and music writer
yeah,
and
that's
producer
not-
who scored that song. That's about as starry as we get.
That's neat. Would you share some of the life-changing events that may have occurred at the island?
Life-changing events. Well, we'd already had our children by the time we moved here. I guess the only thing I could think of is my retirement. When I retired from working about 10 years ago. And we celebrated with a big party down here. But, no other life-changing events.
With your children moving here with you, did they participate at the Balboa Yacht Club you mentioned in your song?
Our youngest daughter did, yes, she was a member there for a couple of years, I think. And she did not want to do it at all. Of course, she didn't know anyone, so she felt like a complete outsider. And she didn't particularly like the water or sailing, but we forced her to do it because we wanted her to find some friends down here. We thought that would be great. And she was young, and she finally, after, I think it was towards the end of the first summer, and she said she didn't want to go back anymore. And we asked her why. She said because She wanted to know what would happen if they opened the drain at the bottom of the bay. So, it's not a good thing to think about if you're out sailing, I guess, if you think that's what's going to happen. Yeah, anyway, so,
That was it.
you know. But yes, she was involved in that for a couple. Our older daughter was she wasn't too old to participate in that. In fact, I think she might even started working by then, so she didn't come down quite as often as the younger one did.
That's great. How have the businesses in the area changed? Is there a particular one off Marine Avenue that exists or doesn't exist today that really kind of shaped your experience here?
Yeah, well, you know, the Jolly Roger was just such an institution here. But, you know, Wilma's, even going back to the original Wilma's location, the patio that they had, and gosh, we spent a lot of time there. We had a standing reservation at the Village Inn for Sunday morning breakfast after church, and the people that owned it at that time, I can't recall their name. They were such nice people.
Diane.
Diane was the woman's name, and they were just terrific about really servicing the residents, because, you know, I mean, they knew that's where their business was going to come back and back and back from, I suppose. And she was just great about, in fact, she would even call on Saturday evening and say, how many for breakfast tomorrow morning? Because, you know, we had lots of friends in and family and things like that. So they were terrific. I was really sorry to see them leave when they sold the business. So.
It's a neat community where you can call something
Yeah,
like that.
really.
It's not often where you have those kind of connections.
Really, that's right.
How about with your neighbors? I've noticed throughout this project there's a really strong sense of community here. How has that shaped your experience?
We've had good situation with our neighbors. Some of them, we have a few houses around us that are permanent rental houses. In fact, the house next door is a permanent rental house. But the house on the closest to the bay next to us, that's what I was pointing out one of your boards up here before. It was built and occupied by Gail Vinci Smith, who we met when we moved in. Unfortunately, she passed away about 3 or 4 months after we moved in. But what a wonderful lady. And she and her family lived there, her 3 children. In fact, her daughter, who moved back into that house about 10 years ago, just sold it to a wonderful family from Minnesota who decided to get out of the cold and come out to paradise. So, smart people. Anyway, but no, we've had good neighbors for the most part. We haven't always had the greatest renters who have come and gone. We had a quick little story. We had 4 or 5 young men moved in next door to us for about a 2-year period. And they would literally on Sunday morning take the hose into the house and hose the floors out into the patio after the party the night before. I mean, it was the worst 2 years of our life. Thank God, when the lease was up, they were out, and they had a lot of renovation work to do and then rented out to a nice family.
We had Roy across the street forever.
Yeah.
They just moved last year too. Some of the littler houses, some of the smaller houses that were there when we moved in are now big.
Oh, yeah, many of them,
Right.
yeah.
Almost all of them.
What do you think about the transformation of the homes from being small cottages to these multi-level homes? I know it changes the community's
Oh, sure,
element.
yeah.
What
Well, I
are
think
your
we're losing the
thoughts on
charm
that?
of the island, I think. You know, if you look at the structure of the home itself, you can almost drive down the street and I can tell you who built that house, that house, that house. Because, I mean, they might change the shape of the windows, they might move the balcony from the left side to the right side or move the door, but they're the same house. And there's like 5 or 6 designs that keep getting multiplied over and over and over again. And I think the major part of the charm of the island has always been the cottages here, and we're losing that. It's too bad.
Is your home particular, have early, what was the year it was built, if you don't mind us?
41.
41.
Okay,
Yeah.
so would it be part of the historic record?
It is.
They are,
It is,
okay.
yeah.
So it's interesting that you share these things because there is, I've noticed a movement of preservation amongst some to keep the historic integrity of some of these earlier homes, and there's also this pressure of moving into a new kind of home. So do you feel like that is shared, this desire, is it growing or is it kind
You
of?
know,
fading
no,
out?
I think it's fading, because I think as people get older and sell their houses, because they pass on or they have to move into retirement dwellings or whatever, you know, the younger people that are coming in, the prices they're needing to pay, you know, they're not gonna live in an older, outdated, small house, you know, they're gonna want a larger house with all the conveniences, you know, with the granite and the, you know, appliances and the
And the
hot tubs and this and that, and you know, they just can't have that,
I
and
know.
they just can't have those things in the older home, so, you know, I think eventually the cottages will be gone. It's just a matter of time.
But I think there's a charm to preserving that as well, and that's kind of why this institution is here, to maintain those memories through oral histories like these, or through the historic walking tours to see where the history lies. And it's remarkable that there's still an element of the early history with us, and to cherish it as long as we do. In another interview, someone remarked, and they used the word island people as a community that they related to. Do you connect to that term? Does your family share that mentality?
Yeah,
of
I've
being
heard that
yeah.
too. I don't know. I think, you know, most of the people here are very friendly and outgoing. But, you know, we've lived in other communities where people have been like that too. I don't know. I guess I just don't subscribe to that much.
Sure. In your song, you mentioned the following lyric: "When you come to visit, you'll surely want to stay." And I think throughout this interview, you've mentioned how those connections kind of took place. Is that an invitation to listeners that you'd hope that they would come and feel the eternal paradise of Balboa Island? What was when you're writing these lyrics, what was the meaning behind those particular words?
Well, I think it was, you know, maybe part of my own experience, you know, and the way that whole thing was started, we can just take a minute. We were sitting at Mitzi and I were sitting at a pre-parade, the June parade here maybe 5 years ago, and Rick Sherman was entertaining. He does the pre-parade entertainment, Rick Sherman. And I said, you know, we need an island song to be played at, you know, at functions like this. So she said, so my wife says, why don't you write one? So that's how it got started. And I've always been kind of an amateur songwriter, just enjoyed doing it for fun. So that's how it got started. And then hooked up with Rick, and he really put a lot of the professional touches on it. But it was, you know, just the expression of how I feel about the island. Just so.
Is there a particular phrase in the song that you really was your favorite?
I think the play, yeah, I think the play on the gem of the island and the jewel in the bay was kind of clever. So, given the names of all the streets, and
right.
So, yeah.
Well, we thank you for sharing not only your memories, but the clip will also try to incorporate the song that you wrote, and it's such a great way to commemorate your journey here and just celebration with retiring in this community. So, are there any thoughts that you'd like to share, perhaps about the island or anything else with closing?
Gosh, I think we've done a good job here. I think we've covered just about everything. I think the people at the museum here are doing a phenomenal job. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that you are helping and having the opportunity to help, and that's going to help, you know, helping your growth too, and what you want to do. So that's definitely a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
And you know, I can think of a lot of people, and I'm going to give a list to Sharon since we talked about this and doing this today, of people that I think you ought to interview, because I think they can really go a long way to helping you towards your goal. So But anyway, thank you, I enjoyed it.
We really appreciate that, and that concludes our interview.